One of the things that we get asked a lot here at Thrive Mortgage is what's the difference between paying points and a buy-down strategy? Well, the answer is very important, especially if you're in the process of getting a mortgage or you're looking to get a mortgage at some point in the near future. So we've got the answer for you, so keep watching. While you're at it, why don't you click that subscribe button, and also be sure to click the little bell over to the side so that you get notified every time we drop a new video. We'll be back in just a second. Hey, welcome back. As we said at the beginning of the video, we're going to talk a little bit about the difference between paying points and a buy-down strategy. And you might be thinking, well, aren't they the same thing? Actually, no, they're not. So the first thing we're going to talk about is what is paying points, or what does paying points actually mean? Well, basically, paying points is a term that we use for situations where borrowers want to permanently buy down their interest rate for the life of the loan. Just so you know, the numbers that I'm using, these are just for illustrative purposes only. Your situation's probably going to be a little bit different than this. So let's say, for example, that we've got a $300,000 loan and a 6.5% interest rate on a 30-year term. If we go through some of the calculations, basically you're at 6.5% interest rate on that loan amount for that term, your payment's going to be roughly $18.96. So I eliminated the change, so hopefully that doesn't matter to you. But let's round it to $18.96 just for simple math. Well, if I want to pay points to buy down that rate, let's say that I have to pay, my loan officer tells me I have to pay 1 point in order to buy down the rate to 6%. Well, that 1 point that the loan officer referenced is effectively 1% of the loan amount. So when we're talking about paying points, we're talking at 1 point is 1% of the loan amount. So in order for me to buy that interest rate down from 6.5% down to 6%, 1 point is going to be, and you said, $3,000. Those of you who had $3,000 in your head, congratulations, you're pretty good at quick math. So I'm going to pay $3,000, an additional investment of $3,000 at closing for the privilege of buying that rate permanently down to 6% from 6.5%. Now there's obviously some trade-offs here. There's pros and cons to any decision that you make regarding a particular mortgage strategy. So what are the pros in doing this? Obviously, it's to get you a lower rate and you've got a lower monthly payment for the life of the loan. You don't have to worry about it. Well, the cons might come into play where you got to examine the return on the investment. So in this particular example, I mentioned that we're paying 1 point to get to 6%, and so that 1 point equates to $3,000. Well, now I got to figure out how long is it going to take for me to recoup that added investment. That's going to tell me whether or not it's truly worth it to me to buy down the rate. So if we do that math, essentially what we have to do is take the difference between the two payments. As I mentioned with the 6.5% payment, it's $18.96 is your monthly principal and interest. Now these payments figures don't factor in taxes and insurance, and mortgage insurance, which could potentially make it a little bit higher. So we'll go with the $18.96 number. Now I got to calculate what the payment is at the 6% number. Well, if I do that math, I find that payment drops down to $17.99. So effectively saving me almost $100, 97 to be exact. So now how do you determine if there's actually what your return on that added investment of $3,000 is going to get you? So we take that $3,000, we divide it by $97, and that results in the number of months it's going to take us to break even. In this particular case, it's about 31 months, and if you translate that into years, it's a little more than 2.5 years. So what this means to you is that as long as I'm planning on living in this house for longer than 2.5 years, it very well could be worth it to me to pay points and buy down that interest rate from 6.5% to 6%. So that's effectively how paying points works as a strategy. Now let's talk about how this compares to a buy-down strategy. The most frequently, or the most common example of this that you're going to see is called a 2-1 buy-down. So let's stick with our 6.5% interest rate that we had in our previous example. If I were to employ a 2-1 buy-down strategy in this particular example, what that means is that during year 1, meaning payments 1 through 12, my interest or my payment is going to be calculated at an interest rate that is 2 percentage points lower than my permanent note rate, which we already determined was 6.5. So in this case, my payment is going to be calculated at a 4.5% interest rate. Therefore, the 2 points reduction. In this 2-1 buy down, let's say we have an example, a loan amount of $400,000. So if I take that $400,000 and I figure out what my payment is going to be for the first year of the loan at 4.5% or at 6.5% interest, that total payment is going to be $25.28. Now that's my original payment at my original interest rate. Utilizing a 2-1 buy down, that payment for year one is going to drop down to just over $2,000. It'll be $2,057. And so that's the payment that you're going to make during year one of that 2-1 buy down term. So because your payment is calculated at 4.5% interest. So during year two, I go up one notch. I go up to 5.5% as the interest rate that's used to calculate my payment. And that works out to $22.71. Now this is really handy for younger homeowners, maybe who are starting a new career where they're expecting an increase in their salary over the next coming years. Or somebody who's building a business. Right now, you need to really watch your cash flow. And so you need a little bit lower mortgage payment, and then as your business grows, so can your mortgage payment, and you kind of grow into that full mortgage payment. So the bottom line is there's any number of justifiable reasons why someone would want to consider a 2-1 buy down. With the buy down strategy, what you are effectively doing is you are front loading that interest that would be accruing over those first 2 years, and that interest is what you're paying at closing. And so, because it's a temporary buy down of the interest rate. All right, so now let's get into calculating exactly how much interest you are being charged in that temporary buy down scenario. The way that that's calculated is actually pretty simple. What you do is you take the original payment that's calculated at 6.5%, and for year one, you're going to subtract it from the year one payment. So in the example we were using, we had $25.28. We're going to subtract $20.27. We get a difference of $501. We multiply that $501 by 12 months. So we get a total amount of just over $6,000 as the total amount of interest that is going to be needed to pay up front. Well, we also have a year two where we were temporarily buying down the interest rate, so we got to make that calculation too. So if you run through those numbers, $25.28 minus $22.71, we get a difference of $251. Multiply that by 12 months and you get a total of about $2,900. Add those two numbers together, we get a grand total of $9,104. Aren't you glad I didn't say $91,000? That would have been a little bit dramatic. So we've got $9,104, and that amount is getting added to your total investment at closing. Now here's one of the cool benefits of doing a temporary buy down. You can also, I mentioned earlier the term seller buy down or seller concessions. You can use seller concessions to cover the temporary buy down, and you're not out of pocket anything additional. Go visit us at thrivemortgage.com and you'll be able to connect with some great professionals who will be able to help you out and answer any questions you've got. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and sign off. Before you leave, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit the little jingle bell to make sure that you get notified whenever we drop our latest and greatest video, and we will see you in the next one. So thanks for watching, and I hope you got a lot out of it. Bye.